Happy Friday, grade 11s. Today we are going to do a little multiplication. So up until now we've been doing common denominators, adding and subtracting of rational expressions. Today is so much easier because it's multiplication. And let's just go over a couple things that we need to remember about multiplication. So if you want to make sure that you are on page 403, all we do with multiplication in fractions is we multiply the tops and we multiply the bottoms. So again, taking you back to your elementary days. Now the second question, we can do the same thing. We could multiply 9 times 5 and 10 times 6, but what I would prefer and what I want you to do is let's cancel out. Let's remember that this 9 times 5 over 10 times 6 is really just one fraction. So if I can simplify this before I multiply it out, much better. Notice I have a 5 and I have a 10. So 5 goes into 5 once, 5 goes into 10 two times. I notice the 6 and the 9 have something in common. That would be 3. So 3 goes into 6 two times, and 3 goes into 9 three times. Therefore, it's much easier. I have 3 times 1 is 3, and 2 times 2 is 4. There you go. That is really the principle that we'll be using as we go through these rational expressions. All right, so the next one, same idea. Remember that the tops and the bottom are separate so that we can start by canceling out a few things. So notice I have a y on the bottom and I have a y on top. So those just actually get canceled out. Easy enough. Notice I have a z on the bottom. I have a z squared on top. Therefore, I'm just going to get rid of that squared part, and I still am left with one z. X's, nothing I can do because there's x's on the top but nothing on the bottom. And now let's look at our whole numbers. So I have a 12 and I have a 4. Well, 4 goes into itself once and 4 goes into 12 three times. Once I get to that point and I can't cancel anything else, I go 3 times 3 is 9. I have 2 x's on the top, so that'll be x squared, and on the bottom I am left with a 1, which I'm just going to ignore. Again, I need to do restrictions, and y cannot equal. Now I know I don't have a y in the answer, but I have to look throughout the entire question where they're located. So I have a y on the bottom, therefore it can't equal 0. And I also noticed my z was on the bottom. It cannot equal 0, or else it would be undefined. All right, let's try another one. So what I've got is a 5 and I have a 40 over here. So I'm going to start with the numbers this time. 5 divided by 5 is 1. 40 divided by 5 is 8. So I've got an 8. On this side, I have a 35 up on top. I could probably take 7 into that. Why would I do that? Which, by the way, gives me 5 because I have a 14 down here. So 14 divided by 7 would give me a 2. So I've pretty well simplified all the numbers. Now I'm going to look at the letters. I have an a squared and I have an a to the power of 3. So I'm going to get rid of that a squared, and the a to the power of 3 is now just going to be a because I've taken away 2 of the a's. What else do we have? We have a c to the power of 4 up here, and I have one c here. I have one c here, so I've used 2 c's. That means this c now becomes to the power of 2. And b's. I have a b squared up here. I have a b squared down here. I'm still left with a b up on top and an a and a d on the bottom. So when I put this all together, I am going to have on top a 5, and I have a b, and I still have a c squared. And on the bottom, I have a 2 and an 8, which makes it 16. And I have a and a d. And let's do that in alphabetical order, ascending order. All right, that's how I do that. And I need to go back now and look at all of my restrictions. A is on the bottom. It cannot equal 0. B was on the bottom, it cannot equal 0. C was also on the bottom, it does not equal 0. And D, the same thing. So I do need to list all of these separately, recognizing that any time there is a letter on the bottom, they all cannot equal 0. All right, let us move on. The method of multiplication for rational expressions is similar. We're going to cancel things out. However, we need to remember we have to factor, and we only cancel out factors. So keep that in mind. What do I have here? I have an x plus 1. Now remember, I can do this because this is multiplication. I can cancel out this x plus 1. I have an x plus 3. I have an x plus 3. What am I left with? On top, I'm left with a 2, and on the bottom, I am left with an x out front and an x minus 2. So that x that I just took here, I just put it out front. All right, and then we do restrictions. X cannot equal, well, whatever was on the bottom. We had x plus 3, so x cannot equal negative 3. X cannot equal negative 1. We did a lot of these already, so I'm just going to go ahead and list them. All right, so next question, same idea, but before I can start canceling things out, I need to make sure I factor. So I'm going to just do this over here. My numerator in the first fraction is going to have a 4 that is common to both terms. So I end up with 4x plus 4, and on the bottom I'm going to pull out a 7. I end up with a 2x minus 1. And in the other fraction, I have, well, a 2x minus 1. I can't do anything with that. But on the bottom, I have an x plus 4. Well, actually, I'm just going to leave it as an x plus 4 squared. I'm going to start canceling. I have an 2x minus 1, and I have a 2x minus 1. They're gone. X plus 4 on top, and I have an x plus 4 on the bottom, but I have 2 of them. So what I will do is I will just eliminate my squared, and I'm still left with 1 of those. The numbers, I have a 4 and a 7. I really can't do anything with that. So I am going to have an answer of 4 on the top, 7 on the bottom, and remember I still have this x plus 4. Restrictions, x cannot equal. Now I look through the entire denominator right from the beginning, and I find that x cannot equal negative 4 and cannot equal 1/2. The negative 4 comes from here, and the 1/2 comes from here. All right, that is pretty straightforward. Let's turn the page, and actually today we only have just a couple little things to do. So if we move on, we will find a few more simplification kind of questions. So I'm going to factor first. The first thing I'm going to do is have a 2m squared out front. I'm looking at this term and I'm looking to see what is common in that binomial that I can pull out front. When I do that, I'm left with an m minus 2. On the bottom, it looks to me like I can pull out a 3m. And when I do that, I'm left with an m minus 3. Other fraction, this one I can't pull anything out, but I can factor it. So I have a simple inspection factoring, and so I'll have m's out front, and I will have a negative 3 and a positive 2. Bottom looks like a difference of squares. I will have n minus 2 and m plus 2. Now that I have all that done, it's pretty straightforward. I'm going to grab my red pen and say, what do I have? Again, I can do this because it's multiplication in between. I could not do that when I was doing adding and subtracting. M minus 2, M minus 2, M minus 3, M minus 3, M plus 2, M plus 2. All I am left with, I can even do something more. I have an m on the bottom, and I have 2 m's on top, so we'll just get rid of that squared, and I'm left with a 2m over 3. M cannot equal, and I go back through all of my factors and my denominators, and m cannot equal plus or minus 2, 0, and 3. All right. One more question for today, and that's going to be it. What we'll do here is some factoring, so feel free to go ahead, or you can stick with me here. We'll have simple factoring by inspection. So I'm going to have an A and an A, a 3 and a 5. There's my first factor. My bottom, I'm going to pull a 3 out front, and I will end up with 2a squared plus 7a plus 3. Now, you know I'm going to need to take that a little bit further, so we'll do that in the next step. I'll put the brackets around that, and then this one will be an a minus, I can pull out an a, so I will have a 1 minus 4a to the power of 2, and the bottom will be, looks to me like we can do decomposition to a minus 1, a plus 5, and that's what we've got. Now, we need to go one step further. So what I'm going to suggest you do, and I'm going to show this to you over at the side, when you have these kind of questions, you may want to just work over at the side when you are factoring. So in the case of this question right here, I probably wouldn't have done this step first. What I would have done, I would have gone over here and written it 2a squared plus 7a plus 3, and then I'm going to factor it at this point. And then what that'll allow me to do is end up doing my factors 2a plus 1 and a plus 3. That will work. And so that way I don't have to use another line. So I'm going to take this guy out, and instead I'm going to put in my factors. So it's better to work at the side when you get to this level, is what I'm trying to say. Just work over at the side, get your factors, and then put them into the big equation. It'll just save you some space. All right, so now that I have that, I'm going to go ahead and just factor, or sorry, not factor, but I'm going to cancel out. Here's an a plus 3, an a plus 3 on the top. I have a plus 5 and an a plus 5. I also have just recognized that this particular question, this top, is a difference of squares, so we're going to need to do something up there as well. So let's take another step. We'll just keep going, and I'll have a 1 on top here. I'm going to have a 3 with a 2a plus 1 on the bottom, and then on this side I still have an a up here, but notice what I have. I have a 1 minus 2a, and I have a 1 plus 2a. So I should have done that right here. I only caught it now, so I'll do it down here. I still have a 2a minus 1 that I haven't got rid of. So let's do a little bit more cancellation here. I have a 2a plus 1. Well, that's the same as 1 plus 2a, so I can cancel those. And here's the one that I talked about the other day. Notice I have 1 minus 2a, and I have a 2a minus 1. Well, we know that I can cancel those out as long as I put a negative 1 up on top, because we worked this out in the class the other day, where I know that when I switch them and multiply by a negative 1, I will get the same values. So knowing that, I'm canceling these guys, and my next step will be negative a all over 3. My restrictions, a does not equal negative 5, negative 3, and plus or minus 1/2. Now I got those again from looking at the bottoms. Here, here, and here, I think I've covered them all. If I've missed one, you'll understand. All right, that